everybody. Welcome to All the Forbidden Things. This is the show where we talk about all the things we're not talking about or ways that we're not talking about them. Today, I am joined by Joseph M. Lenard. He is an author of 13 books sold internationally, including Roller Coasters, The Life Kind. Today, we are going to talk about the subject of complicated grief, which is the foundation of the plot of his latest book. And we'll talk about a little bit about maybe some relationships and loss I've had in my life, and we'll just have sort of a frank conversation about how we navigate complicated relationships when we lose them. So, do you want to start off and tell us a little bit about the origins of the book and why you wanted to write it?
Sure. Well, most of my nonfiction books come to me through a dream, and this was no differently. The DeLorean scene, we'll just say that without giving the book away, came to me in a dream and made me think of old Ace Frehley, who recently had passed. I was thinking of him. He has a song Rock Soldiers about being in a DeLorean automobile accident. Oop, I guess I kind of gave away part of it. Spoiler alert! But we've already said it's about loss. Now you understand how the loss occurs. But that came to me in a dream, and I never would have thought I'd have dealt with this kind of a book, but I just kind of take them as they come. I don't really plan a next book. Like currently, I'm not writing anything. I've got a life and living series of books, of which Roller Coaster Tycoon. I'm thinking of the video game, I used to love to play Roller Coaster Tycoon. Roller Coasters, The Life Kind. I only have a sheet because it's only available on ebook. I don't have a physical printed book of it. But it is the fifth in the Life and Living series of books, which was started with my first international published book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, which you might think a book about terrorism, but it's not about death and destruction. It's a life and living book about life over death, hope over fear, faith over despair, love over hate, good over evil, individualism over collectivism, freedom over tyranny, family and friends. And I never would have thought when I wrote that book, which came to me in a dream, that I'd ever be doing a life and living series of books. But after that one, the light bulb went on in my head. Well, life and living series makes sense, but they're not the traditional series in a Clancy like Jack Ryan or Harry Potter with the same carryover characters. There are a few cross-referenced in the books, but each is a standalone book dealing in its own subject. Like you said, Roller Coaster. I'm going to say Tycoon again. I get the stupid video game in my head. Roller Coasters, The Life Kind. There is also, I write music. You could go to tinyurl.com/JLD on Suno, and there's a couple roller coaster songs that are written that also deal with, life as a metaphor, as a roller coaster, the ups and downs of life. And I never would have thought, as I was saying, it would be a whole series, but I've got like 3 different series. That, the Life and Living series, tinyurl.com/life and living series, a tinyurl.com Christitutionalist EDU series. My Christitutionalist podcast has a spin-off set of books. So I never know what order I'm going to write in, whatever I feel called at any given moment. And I dealt in loss a little in a short story, A Lasting Legacy book. There is a physical copy of that one that I'm holding up. But that one was written in journal entry style, so it's a very different style book. And a short story, even though it's a novelette, technically size-wise. It's called a short story because Ryan's life is cut short, so it deals with that. But not to the degree where you deal with grief yourself and potentially the regret and the guilt that can go with that and the desire to cling to what you had. You don't know what you've got till it's gone, that old saying kind of thing. So yeah, I don't. I'm rambling now. We were joking before we hit record. I was supposed to be taking a nap. Good thing the alarm went off. So I think my head is still in bed right now. But that's another thing. I do have ADHD OCD, so you never know where my brain's going to go. If it's in ADHD mode, it may jump all over. If it's in OCD mode, it may want to focus on one rabbit hole and never let it go. So, and I deal with that in the book a little too.
Yes, I'll take you down some rabbit holes. So yeah, you do mention that in the book, the character. There were a lot of things where I wondered how this feels so from a real life experience. And then there were certain details, and I thought that and the character having OCD was one of them, and kind of well rounded him. What struck me, I think initially in the book and in our conversations, is this idea of a complicated kind of grief. So a lot of times when we lose somebody, you always see on film and in media people talking about, like, at the beginning of a movie, they have like the woman lying in bed with the man and they roll over and she's going to die. Because it's like perfect. and there's always like these, and a lot of the deaths that one sees, at least in like dramas, are purely mourned. And so I think in the book, Rick is actually very regretful of how I hope I'm not giving too much away, but is regretful of how he handled the relationship that he lost.
He always felt there'd be more time, and that's part of the point of what I wanted to broach in the topic. We're not promised tomorrow.
Yeah.
I have a couple Suno songs, again, tinyurl.com/JLD Suno, that JLD on Suno, sorry. I just wrote one, Gone Too Soon, about that. People who we lose that are then gone too soon. We're not promised tomorrow, but we expect that we're always going to have that time. And then another one that I wrote, Don't Wait Till It's Too Late. That same sentiment. Don't wait, because we're not promised tomorrow. And I like how you mentioned complicated, which is also the title of one of the books in the Life and Living series of books about complicated relationships. And indeed, we don't know how much time we're going to have with one another.
We don't, and it affects how we relate to each other in the moment, because I think you take for granted that, I can put something on hold and always pick it back up again later. Or I can, and I've seen in films where people say, the last words I said to them were this or whatever. But then in my life, it just goes over my head. And until you live it, you don't know what that really means. In complicated relationships, there is often somebody who asks a lot and somebody who gives a lot. And there's often this sort of the one who, and in
it's
the book,
never usually equally yoked. Yes. Unfortunately.
Yes, and in some relationships, when that's very much a contention point or something that's very strong, in grief, it's very difficult from both sides, because in the case of being the person who might have been the giver, if you will, in the relationship, it's hard to lose the person that you gave a lot to. And it's also hard because sometimes you may have felt conflicted about what you gave and how much you gave and how you were received. And on some level, when you lose that person, you don't get the chance to feel received in the way you might have ultimately wanted to. And in the book, it's the total reverse of not having had the chance to receive somebody who kept giving and giving and not having really provided the level of attention or appreciation that was truly felt, but not fully manifested at times.
Yeah, I wrote that note down. Appreciate. That's exactly where I wanted to go next. Had we told them enough? Did they really know how much I'm getting emotional now? And I hope people comes across that way, as I mean it to be that way. Uh, I always ask people to think. I don't want you to be an emotional, hysteric person, but we are emotional creatures. Did you tell them enough how much you love them? More importantly, they knew you loved them, but did they really know how much you appreciated them while they were here before it's too late and they're gone?
I have had the experience a number of times with relationships in my life where the person, I actually had something come back today where somebody had brushed me off in the past and I'd really processed it like I was frustrated. And then they came back around and said, by the way, I actually felt the opposite way and didn't know how to express it and whatever. And it provided me a lot of relief. But what I also wanted to say is that I have sometimes, I think people who are like givers, I, I, I have often been able to see the love that somebody has for me, but I can see that it's just got a little bit of a glass window around it that's comprised of the things that they struggle with or their ability to express it or their flaws. And so I think on some level, if you are experiencing, anybody is experiencing, but a feeling of like, oh my God, I hope they knew how much I appreciated them. Unless you tell them that you didn't appreciate them, sometimes energetically it is felt. And they did
You
know.
hope so. You hope
Yes.
so.
And they did
But
maybe know on some
you
level.
shouldn't hope. Hope is great. Hope
No,
is wonderful, but hope is not a strategy.
it is
You've
not.
got to vocalize. You've got
Yeah.
you've got to give hugs, you got to get hugs, all that sort of thing, but you've got to vocalize. And I'm glad you used the word flaws. My Constitutionalist podcast and the whole series deals with us as human beings, the animal side of us. We're all flawed, we're all frail, we're all imperfect. And you get two imperfect people trying to deal with each other. No such thing in my mind, and I might upset some people here, as a soulmate,
Yeah, I don't
because
believe that either.
there's 8 billion people on this planet. We're compatible with a lot of various people. The chances that you're going to come across someone who is even 100% in tune with you all the time is slim to none, and Slim has got his coat on, exiting the building, as the joke goes. Because we're human, we're different. If you agree with someone 100% of the time, then guess what? You're probably not the thinker in the relationship. You're a sheeple.
That's so true.
And
Ah.
in you, it's normal, it's natural to have disagreements, and it's abnormal, and it can be injurious to try to avoid some confrontations on occasion. Little battles over unimportant stuff makes for a great relationship. You want,
Mhm.
if it's always
Yeah.
little stuff you're arguing about, you're doing well.
No, that's so true. And it like
Right?
never escalates too far.
You're really gonna wear that in public? Okay. I'm not sure I want to be seen with you wearing that, but okay, that's on you.
Oh
Did
man.
you dress him? No, he dresses himself. I wouldn't choose that outfit for him. But seriously, we're
Yeah.
laughing, but that's important. All
Hmm.
these, that's why I'm writing the Life and Living series of book, and Roller Coasters the Life Kind, now the fifth one in that series, to try to deal with different aspects of life and living, because it's not all nice and neat and tidy. It's messy. Life is messy.
And I think like when you lose somebody who might have been their messiness was very apparent to you, it's hard. So I don't know if you've ever had this experience in anyone that you've lost in your life, but when uh before someone dies, the last thing that you interacted on is what you most remember about them. You remember how they made you feel or how you made each other feel. And you do remember the whole thing sort of in a like loose way, like knowing that the rest of the relationship happened, but we often remember that last piece or the and then when they die, it's like the whole person comes flooding back in. They're almost, I remember when I lost my grandfather, it was almost like he was suddenly ageless. And all of the years that I'd known him and the states that he'd been in, and almost even this sense of like my grandfather as a child, who I obviously never knew, it was like all his energy was in the room all of a sudden. And and his whole life was there. And I have felt that
Could
in the
very
loss of
well
a
have
friend.
been you might have felt an after death experience,
Yeah.
a
And it
spiritual visitation.
yes, it felt very much that way for sort of a short period of time, for some days maybe, or like and then he passed onward. Um and I had that a little bit recently with the most recent death in my life, and it felt like they had something to say to me, and they said it, and they actually forgave me for something that I felt bad about, and then kind of passed onward. And it's like I still feel them there, but it becomes less loud. But even just in the remembering of their life, I remember every single memory all of a sudden, like much more vibrantly. Things that I'd completely forgotten about. It's like, oh, we went to this place and that place, and any of the little bit of pain or conflict that may have been there towards the end, I suddenly felt just flooded with all of the positive feelings and the love and the memories as well. There were things that needed to still be worked through mentally, but and so I would imagine if somebody like Rick in the book is on the other side of that experience, in the sense that they remember all of the things with that person and all of how wonderful they were, but then they feel like they didn't get to express it, that they didn't show up properly, they didn't appreciate it. That's a really overwhelming experience.
We're always usually our own harshest critic, too. So that's where the grief, when the loss and the grief we all deal with, regret and guilt can come in, is we're most hard on ourselves. Yeah, we remember. And the trick is, let me back up. No one is ever fully lost unless we let them be forgotten. That's a key part of the story here. And, but we often are our own harshest critics, and we remember the negative things, the things that nag at us, that regret and that guilt. But their legacy depends on us making sure they're never forgotten.
Mm.
And that's important. If we truly love them, we can't let them be forgotten.
And we can't, like in the example you're giving of beating yourself up about interactions that you had with them or whatever, like we can't do that and immortalize them in like the worst conflicts we had with them or the worst moments. I
Right.
had a grief counselor, a grief coach. I may put her info in the show notes for anyone listening. But she uh, told me that we often fixate on feelings of guilt because we actually are trying to avoid feelings of powerlessness, because it's easier to feel guilt than the powerlessness of having lost somebody and not being able to do anything anymore.
Yeah. Well,
And
we
that,
can't quite resolve them with that person, but
yeah,
we have to at least try to resolve it within ourselves.
yes. And how do you can talk about how Rick does it or how you may have learned it in your life, but I liked, I won't give away the ending of the book, but I like how he is going on this journey of slowly getting to this place of how do I consciously immortalize her and bring her honor and bring life back to her. So yeah, I mean, yeah, tell me a little bit more about where that
Yeah,
came from or anything.
that's key. Honor, integrity, honoring their life. Uh, Again, not dwelling on negative things. If you continue to dwell on the negative, then you're pulling their legacy down with you. And do
Mm.
you really want to do that? And I would dare say 9 times out of 10, the answer is no, unless if it's somebody you really hated in life. You know?
Best way to get
Just-
back at them.
but indeed, the honoring, how love, shock, denial, anger, acceptance. You've got those phases, and the key is not getting stalled or frozen in any one of those phases. And
Mm.
acceptance is not the point of moving on or forgetting. Again, they're only lost if we allow them to be forgotten. It's just accepting, well, I can't see them again in this life. I can hope, if you're a person of faith, you hope you'll see them in the afterlife, in the next plane, the eternal soul's realm plane of existence. You'll see them again. But for the here and now, how are you going to honor them? You have they 9 times out of 10, unless if they're a spiteful sob, would want you to move on, right?
Mm.
I'm hesitant to use the term move on. You know what I mean? Because again, moving forward, not moving past.
Yeah, it's more like a release. Like it's not that those things didn't exist. It's not that they, but just releasing the potency of them
Yeah,
and letting them go.
yeah, and again, I think it's important to remind we're all frail, flawed, and imperfect. There's no one right way to go through shock, denial, anger, and acceptance.
Yeah.
There's no perfect way to do it. No right way, no wrong way. We each have to deal with it as it comes, and for each different person in our life, it may be different. You're going to
Mm.
grieve different people in different ways for different reasons. And sometimes grief might get put off because you're in the middle of a hectic situation going on, hence my complicated book, right? Life can be complicated. Other
Mm.
factors get in the way of what's going on with our lives and something we may need to deal with, but we're not quite able to deal with it now. We have to put it off till later.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Going back to this idea of remembering the good in someone and like keeping their memory alive, there's a part of me sometimes that's like, well, I don't want to just whitewash over,
Oh, no, you don't
you
want to
know.
do that
So
either.
yeah, because and I think when people are grieving, I had seen this before.
You
I
got
had
to
the
remember their
experience.
flaws too. That was who they were.
That's part of who they are. Yeah, I think because I have seen, like, when you enter like almost a later grief
Don't
stage.
speak ill of the dead.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, no. I will speak about the dead every bit as much as I would speak to their face.
Yeah, because they lived, that was their life, and what they did in every regard was part of their legacy. But I had somebody who told me, it was the grief coach again, who said, at some point you will be able to, you can choose which one you want, but whether you remember more of the good or more of the bad. And it's okay as long as you acknowledge all of the things. If you choose to just remember the good in them or the better parts of them, ultimately to prioritize memorializing that. And that, I mean, that kind of, it makes me think about, like, a lot of the reasons that people make mistakes or that we're flawed is due to a weakness that we have. But like, I personally believe that there's an essence, you could call it a soul or whatever, that everybody has, that is inherently um, good, positive, like full of life, right? And so then, um, if we're remembering someone's flaws, we're really just remembering the static that got in the way of the radio station of an incredible soul, right? And so you can let go, acknowledge the static that they had, acknowledge the weaknesses that they had, but let the sound of their frequency be the thing that remains in your ears,
Yeah,
you
which is
know?
not to say at the funeral you'll trash them. All right, we're not
Right,
certainly
exactly.
not saying.
To the
Like
positive.
I want to bring up my short story, Lasting Legacy, the eulogy chapter. Dave began, I know you're not supposed to speak ill of the dead, but Ryan was a real massive jerk, he continued. As our mutual friend Kennedy would say, a real masshole. Now, of course, he's kidding. He's doing it on purpose because Ryan had a sense of humor and would want the people at his funeral to remember his fun and funny side and that you can't be serious all the time. So yeah, we choose how we remember, and we've got to remember we all have good, bad, and sometimes some ugly in all of us. And remembering the whole person is important.
Yeah, yeah. He talks in the book about how, so in the book, the relationship that's lost is a partner. And so this is that's a very particular kind of loss. And I think a lot of people can relate to that through losing through the end of a relationship, even if the person has not died. That often feels like a death.
Correct. I hope
Yeah,
that the writing affords that sort of lesson as
absolutely.
well. It's losing someone no matter how you lose them. Death
Yes.
is, of course, the most permanent method, and there's no return from it. But
Yeah.
yes, all relationships, sometimes if they come to an end, that loss is still there without the death. Yes, thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
You caught that. Good.
Yeah. Very much so. And I think in a partner, he says in the book something that made me think about, like, you before you meet somebody that really changes your life as a partner, that brings joy and vibrance and all these things that you often end up taking for granted while you're in the relationship, um, you sort of are in this one state of being, and then they expand you and they expand your life, and then when they die and they bring out parts of you, okay, like they bring out like different vibrations in you that maybe no one else brought out, and they saw these parts of you that no one else brought out, and then when they're gone, when you lose them through like a breakup, it's extremely painful particularly if they leave you, there ends up being this active rejection of those things that is very difficult. And then in death, there's just the finality of not getting it back and the loss of control. But you lose for a moment, at least in one very significant ending of a relationship in my life, that it was like I lost part of the universe. Like, it wasn't that he completed me, it was just that he added more planets to my system. And then all the planets left. And I was like, oh my God, I got used to this cosmos. Like, where did all this life go? Where did this color go? And and for a moment you're like thrown back into where you were before. But then I slowly started to realize that he had awoken, like a tuning fork, my awareness of those aspects of life, or those colors, if you will, of life. And then I had to maybe more consciously go and find them in new places or find them in myself. But integrating that expansiveness of, this person brought these things into my life, I will either honor them or that person specifically for bringing them in, or I will find more of that life they brought in other places. And in some way, they will almost live on by giving me that journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad again you mentioned the take for granted. Again, we're not promised tomorrow, whether it be through a breakup or the ultimate someone taken through death. It's easy to take for granted because you get caught up in the day-to-day life. Hence my whole life and living series of books, tinyurl.com/life and living series, meant to point out various aspects. And a sub thread through them all is life gets in the way. And indeed, like the song, don't wait till it's too late. You've got to find time to make time. Somebody did a song, find time to make time. I can't think of who did that song now, but it's going to bother my OCD brain now all the rest of the day till I find it on YouTube. Oh, find time to make time, show time to be there. Look around you, play a part. I can hear it in my head now, but I can't think of the artist or the song. But anyway, if hopefully somebody in the audience knows what I'm talking about anyway. But indeed, life life's complicated. Hence one of the titles of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. And let's I want to pick your brain a little bit further on, because the character found a way. So surely you know the way. Um
no, not necessarily. Again, what works for one doesn't.
It's
Your
true.
mileage.
Yeah. But the when you acknowledge that you have regret about the way that a relationship ended, um, how do you suggest anyone get to the place of acceptance of yourself, of finding a way? Let's say you didn't manage to acknowledge the relationship at the time. What the hell can you do after they've died, especially, to acknowledge them when you don't have a chance to acknowledge to their face anymore, to get that feeling, to resolve that?
Is visiting the grave site an
Hmm.
act enough? Talking to them still as if they're still here, right?
Mm.
It's not like it's not idol worship. You're not praying to somebody to grant you a favor. We all know only, well, I don't want to get into faith here, but you're not idolizing them or worshiping them or praying to them as if they are God, but each person's crutch, to lack of a better term, it to get them through the acceptance is going to be different. Each one
Mm.
will be different. And it's up for you to determine and find and discover indeed what that acceptance is. And it may change. You may think you've accepted something, and then years later, you come across something in a closet from that person, and it brings back a
Mm.
flood of emotions, and you realize I didn't fully resolve that, and there's still some resolving that needs to happen. So there's no right way, there's no wrong way, there's no set time limit definition on when that has to occur. You hope it occurs before your death.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good reminder. All the unresolved things that we leave behind. Yeah, I think in my what I saw in the book and in my thought, the first step seems to be, though, in any case, or it could be in a different order, but there's the step of of accepting your part in their life, in the relationship, in the experience, and a kind of forgiveness, like a forgiveness of self, a forgiveness of, and a like we've
Of
talked about
them,
the
if there needs to be.
yes, absolutely. But the acknowledgement of the fragility of the human existence, the frailty that you're talking about, the flawed nature that we all have, you, the person you lost, everything, that frailty, and then being able to move from that acceptance of the frailty to slowly beginning to reintegrate more and more of the expansiveness of them, and accepting the larger elements and the loss. But I do think it probably does begin with that acceptance of the humanity that we all have.
And I'm glad you're making me feel better about the book now because it's only been out since May. We're talking in July of 2026. It's only been out since May of 2026. And I made it a $1.99 US dollar Kindle exclusive, $4.99 audio book. There are no print versions, which is why I was joking about earlier holding up the paper cover, because there is no hardcover copy of it. And in fact, if you've got a book in you, you may want to check out my How to Write a Book and Get It Published Hints, Tips, and Techniques.
I'm
That
going to check
help
that out.
that, that helps you write the book that I know is in you. But
Mm.
oh, my ADHD brain went off down that rabbit hole and forgot what the original one was.
Well, it's a good rabbit hole to go down because I was going to say we can talk about where people can find you and get more of your books and yeah, where you're at.
Yeah, if you know what Linktree is, that's where all my, well, 90% of my links are. LINK J Lenard Detroit. It's not Lenard. It looks French. It's Leonard without an O. So J for Joseph, Lenard, Lenard, Detroit, because I'm in the Detroit area. That's most of my links. But I also have an author website, josephmleonard.us. My Terror Strikes book has a site, terrorstrikes.info. All my books on Amazon. That's the one place you can find them all. tinyurl.com/JLD on Amazon for the.
Great. And I will put all of that in the show notes as well. Is there anything else you would like to say about grief or regret before we close?
Oh, I'm sure we could go for days.
Do you have any final closing thoughts, something burning desires?
Oh, yes, good question. I often have a character say in several of my books, remember, things could always be better, but they could often be worse. A
Mm.
life philosophy to live by. So before we you know, get down on ourselves too much. We have accomplished some things. They could be worse. Things could be a whole lot better, but there's a whole lot of people who have things a lot worse off than we do. So glass half empty, glass half full kind of philosophy. Things
Mm.
could always be better. They could often be worse. As long as we're striving to make things better, that's what really matters.
Mm. Yeah. And no one is ever really lost unless we allow them to be forgotten.
Amen.
As you have said a few times, that's a great quote. All right. Well, thank you so much. This was great. I feel lighter.
That'll be $100 for the session. Yeah. Grief counseling, right? Since you mentioned the grief counselor, I figured it's a joke, people. It's lighten up, can we please? Things are always so serious. We need to keep a sense of humor.
We
That was
really
a
do.
joke.
We really do. We really do.
Thank you for having me. Before I forget to say that, I really
Yes. No, it's been a pleasure.